On the second part of this INI9 conversation with Chidu, we'll talk about what happens now. What happens next. Now that U.S.-Pakistan relations are at what I call a Y junction, what happens next?
The sense I get, sitting in Washington and interacting frequently with a lot of Pakistanis, most of them, liberal Pakistanis, is that constancy is shrinking. Much as we'd all like to believe and hope that the Pakistani intelligentsia, the liberal intelligentsia, will retrieve some ground and have a voice in the running of the country. That constancy seems to be becoming smaller and smaller, and as a matter of fact, I'm beginning to see many of them actually,
jump over to the which is a very curious and but entirely predictable effect where there's bandwagoning going on, right? Presumably, liberal commentators who are liberal as long as the Zardari experiment was working have suddenly developed second thoughts and are now jumping over to the pragmatic side of things, which is core for supporting the military.
Those who continue to live in Pakistan are starting to do this because we all know what happened to Salim Shahzad,
right.
And several other journalists. They were made examples. It's obviously not an easy place to live in right now. I have friends who are Pakistani journalists, writers, commentators who live in the United States, but whose family is in Pakistan, and they have started to tread a very cautious line. There's also a small constancy, of course, which is shipping out their assets, so to say, to London and
Dubai and
other places, hoping this will blow over.
So if this constituency, right, if this liberal Pakistani constituency is so small that you can't even form a basketball team with these guys or a cricket team with these guys. Now, if the team, if these numbers are small, to the extent they are small, the scope for endogenous change coming from within Pakistan is low, right? We can kiss that chance goodbye. It doesn't exist. Now, what else? What prospects for change then? It has to come from outside.
It has. See, the fact is, the United States still holds a lot of cards. One of my fundamental disagreements with the current narrative is that the US has no leverage. Yeah. I simply refuse to believe that. That is simply. The US can pull the plug on this country, and it won't survive for a week. Its currency won't survive. Its imports. This country is on. It's on life support, and it's on life support from the United States and from a few Gulf countries
and China
and a bit China. But China is not going to supply it with oil,
right?
Nor technology, nor
even significant amounts of money,
or even visas for its elite. Come on. So the United States, the Great Britain, the West still has considerable leverage. The sad part is the United States has got itself trapped in this belief that if we pull the plug on Pakistan, they're going to collapse and it's going to get worse. Right? So it just feeds into this whole fear that the nuclear weapons will fall into jihadi hands, which is a fear that the Pakistanis also carefully feed into.
Right.
That if you desert us, the jihadis will take over. Right. And the counter narrative to that is to tell them that if the jihadis take over, you guys will be the first victims.
Right. And in my view, jihadis have already taken over. Pakistani Army's logo or what a motto is jihad in the cause of Islam.
Absolutely. So I still feel that the US and the West have enough leverage. They have financial leverage, economic leverage, and also cultural leverage. There is, all said and done, there is small, like we agreed, a small liberal elite, but including in the army, but who have children and nephews and nieces going to the US and UK wanting to study there. There are levers that the US can use.
Will they be used?
Exactly. So unless the US gets out of this mindset that if we tighten the screws on Pakistan, this is a very popular narrative in Washington, that if we tighten the screws too much, this state, it's a fragile state.
But that's the elite sort of narrative, right? But if you look at I don't look at US politics so much, but some of the recent political debates, whether it's in Congress or during the presidential nomination debates, there seem to be a popular narrative in the US building up against Pakistan.
You're dead right there, because what's happening is that this narrative is also coming out of a lot of the US military, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But I just want to say that the popular narrative of what the politicians are saying in the debates, that will get straightened out once they reach the White House and Congress, because there again they're guided by the compulsions of real politics, geopolitics, and this whole old narrative about Pakistan will collapse. But what's happening is that within the US military, the anger against Pakistan is very high, which is why I suspect that this whole episode which happened 2 weeks ago in Momand was coming for a long time, because I meet any number of US servicemen and this thing in my neighborhood, in the gym, in the supermarket, young kids coming back with a missing limb. You talk to them and they are furious. They regard Pakistan as an enemy. All this fiction about ally, complete rubbish, because they are the guys, they are the fighting guys on the ground, and they are the guys who are getting shot at by the Pakistanis and the Pakistani-sponsored Taliban. So there's a lot of anger running through, and I could have almost predicted it, a year or two ago. And there have been incidents over the past year of any number of firefights between US Special Forces and Pakistanis. So I think a lot of Republican politicians, and particularly in the run-up to the presidential debate, they'll respond to that ground level sentiment. And if you look at the polls, I mean, come on, you look at the polls in both Pakistan and the United States, the Aam Aadmi is essentially saying, there are enemies.
Right.
So this whole fiction of their allies, it's come apart. It's an old story. Nobody believes it. Even when Hillary Clinton goes to Pakistan and makes all those nice sounds, people don't believe it. She doesn't believe it. She doesn't sound convincing herself.
Right. So, but okay. So the last leg of this fiction, right? This fictional narrative which you mentioned is the idea that you give civilian aid, you support the civilians and against the military, and something good will happen. What do you make of that?
Again, like we've discussed, even the United States now believes that money is fungible. Hillary Clinton herself has said that. So as long as the Pakistanis continue to muscle up, on the military front, everyone knows that civilian aid is, just being misused, as it has been over several years. And there is nothing to show. I mean, what is there to show for all the U.S. civilian aid all these years? The country still has nothing to show. So I don't see this working, for much longer. The only thing, the turnabout, is if the Pakistani military itself realizes, and we still don't know. The sense is that the military is turned fundu. It's a jihadi military, right? I still don't know if there is any small liberal section in the military. If there are at the 3-star, general level. Lieutenant generals, if there are liberal elements, if they are strong enough, if they can retrieve some ground and change the whole military narrative, which also means making peace with India, forgetting about the strategic depth of Afghanistan.
But that's a long shot. It's like expecting Santa Claus to be in bikinis.
We are close to Christmas, so what the hell? No harm hoping. Yeah. But you're right. It's a lot to hope for. I don't see it happening, but. Yeah. Christmas.
It's Christmas. So thanks, Chidu. So it was good having you, and we'll probably do long distance once you're back in your perch in Washington DC.
Thank you very much. Good to